Hey everybody, I'm Angie Larson. I get to serve as the executive pastor here at Calvary, and I am so honored that you are worshiping with us today. Today we're in the second week of our worship series called Asking for a Friend. You know, sometimes there's those questions in life, and especially questions in the life of faith that you're kind of afraid to ask. And so maybe you're a little embarrassed to ask. So you're just sort of asking for a friend. But really, in all reality, it's you who really wants to know the answer to that question. Today we're going to look at the question, does God really have a plan for my life? And I have some thoughts on this question, and I want to know what you think. Let's explore it together. Welcome to church.
Excuse me. This says 22 to 37 pounds. Is there really going to be that much poop?
So, how many years can you drive without car insurance?
You'll hear more information about that from your supervisor. Any questions?
Is Candy Crush considered work time?
Is this the right way to do a middle part?
Hey, what's your favorite song in Frozen 2?
Bunsen burger.
Yeah, quick question. Are 2 triple stackers enough for one person? Yeah, asking for a friend.
Sharon wanted to know.
What?
Not like I've ever seen Frozen 2. Gross.
Asking for a friend.
Because that's a lot of poop.
Okay, so now we are going to dive right in. So I'm asking for a friend. Does God have a plan for my life? Now I'll ask it for me. I have wondered this question and wrestled with this question for most of my life, if I'm really honest. Does God have a plan for my life? Does God have a plan for your life? And I think that that's really a hard question for us to answer. Does God have a plan? I think it's tough because I don't know about you, but if there is a plan for my life, I would love to see a map, a detailed map of this plan. Because if I look at my life and the things that have happened in my life, there are some things that have worked out for me, but there's a lot of things that just really haven't. There are a lot of things out there that I expected God to have prepared for me, and I find not knowing what the plan is for my life really, honestly, very frustrating. It was in 2010 when I left ministry. I was working full-time in a church in Iowa as the youth director at this large congregation, and I had 3 kids at home, Chase, Mackenzie, and Sawyer. And my husband, Ryan, he had recently graduated graduate school, and so he was now launching his career as an architect at an architectural firm named Durant. And my stress level at this time, working full-time and with 3 kids at home, was just through the roof. I was a busy mom, and Ryan and I, we were talking about wanting a 4th child, and I wasn't sure how I was going to be able to do that with a full-time job. So Ryan and I, we sat down together, and we prayed about it, and we prayed, and then we decided together that it was time for me to leave ministry for a while and focus in on our family while Ryan started to build his career. And it was really sad to do it. It was with deep sadness because I loved my church and I loved the work that I did, but I just was so tired. And that tired came into the ministry and I was kind of burned out. But I was also kind of excited about this new opportunity to be a stay-at-home mom because I felt like it was the right choice for me. I felt like convicted that this is the path that God was leading me on. So I turned in my letter of resignation and I had tears in my eyes when I handed it over to the church council. And I also felt joy at the same time because in the same week I had found out that I was pregnant. And so I was so excited. It seemed like a confirmation that I was on the right path for my life. And fast forward a couple of weeks, the church threw me this huge going away party, and I cried, and they cried, and we hugged, and we said goodbye. And then on that next day, that Monday, I woke up like super mom because I knew that this job as a mom was now my new full-time job. I woke up early and I made pancakes for my kids and I packed their lunches super healthy and I got them all to their different schools early. And then I went home and I walked in the door to my house in my new job as a stay-at-home mom, and I figured out that I was having a miscarriage. And here I was now crying on the bathroom floor because I had just left a job that I loved for a baby that I didn't have. So what kind of terrible plan is that? I'm going to fast forward a little bit more, and my husband Ryan's company, Durant, it was supposed to be bought out by another company during this same time there because Durant, it was in financial trouble. But this other company was supposed to be the answer to all those financial problems. So they were going to merge together. But then it was 10 p.m. on a Wednesday night when Ryan got a phone call that said, hey, we're going to need you to come get your personal stuff out of the office because the merger didn't go through, and we're going to be locked out of the building tomorrow morning because no one has paid the rent. And all of a sudden, Ryan was completely unemployed too. So where was God's plan in all of this? Where were those prayers that we sat down intentionally did and in hopes for direction for our lives? Did God plan for me to leave my job and then to have a miscarriage? Did God plan for Ryan to suddenly become unemployed as we were trying to raise the 3 kids that we had? And I think this raises a big question for us. And I ask this question all the time. Does God have a plan for my life? I think sometimes we imagine that it's kind of like a dot to dot. Do you remember these dot to dots that we did when we were children? You start with number 1 and you make the line all the way through the dots until the picture reveals itself. But here is the thing about dot to dots. You kind of have an expectation about what the picture is going to be before you get going to it. It's like you have this vision of it without even connecting the dots. I bet without connecting the dots that you can tell me that this is a car. And I bet without connecting the dots, you can tell me that this is, I'll give you a minute, it's a goldfish. And now, I'm going to give you a really hard one, but without connecting the dots, you can still see a vision that this is a Dalmatian. Yeah, you didn't even have to connect the dots in order to get a picture for what this is like. You see, we just have this vision in our head, and we can kind of see what it should look like before we start doing the work of connecting the dots, which actually aids us in connecting the dots. You see, I had a vision in my mind that I would stay home for a few years with our kids and that Ryan would work and I would raise our 4 children with enough time to finish the laundry during the day or work out in the morning or volunteer at school, and I'd make healthy dinners for my whole team. But it didn't work out that way at all. My life turned out nothing like I imagined. It wasn't like an organized dot to dot, but instead it was this big, messy scribble of a life. Here we are after the holidays, and online right now there's this meme called What I Got versus What I Ordered. Now here's a guy who ordered a rug online. He imagined that this rug was going to be the size of his room, but this little piece of cloth is what he got. He didn't double check the dimensions before ordering this rug online. Or here's somebody who got something different than what they expected. They expected to get a nice tall Santa Claus by this beautiful tree. Instead, they sort of got this creepy guy. Or this ordered online, this mom who ordered an Elsa cake for her daughter's birthday. And when it came out, she got this. She expected to have Elsa and got this I don't know, monkey kind of sort of thing over here. We have this picture of what we want, but then it ends up looking totally different than what we expected. We have this picture of how we think that our life is going to go, and we assume that somehow God's going to magically reveal this plan for our lives if we can just connect the dots. Or I heard a preacher describe it this way, and I thought it was really helpful. You see, we have these little things in our lives, these little wrenches, these things that come up and they interrupt our image that we have for our life. They interrupt our expectations. There's this saying that we have in the United States saying, oh, it threw a wrench in our plans. And sometimes the wrenches, they're little, like this one, like how I was on my way to film this message for you and I spilled on my shirt. So I quick had to go get a different shirt, wrecking the plans for the shirt that I had originally picked out today. Or little wrenches, like when you're driving in the car on your way somewhere and your infant has a total blowout, and so you have to change the cute little outfit that you had planned for them to wear that day. Or little wrenches like when school is canceled because the weather is ridiculously cold, or there's a blizzard outside. Now you have to figure out what you're going to do with your kids all day. Or little wrenches in life when the furnace goes out, when it is below zero here in Alexandria. But let's be honest, sometimes in life there are a little bit bigger wrenches. There are bigger things that come and they mess up our plans. Like maybe when your kid gets kicked out of school, or you total your car, or you didn't get the job that you really wanted, or you find out your spouse is having an affair. Or an addiction, it breaks your relationship, or all of a sudden the weight of all your mistakes, all of your shortcomings, it just comes up and catches up with you and throws a wrench in your plans. And sometimes in life there's even bigger wrenches that send your life on a totally different road entirely. Things like losing a baby, or a house fire, or a tough diagnosis that you didn't see coming, or when your mom dies of cancer, or when your husband breathes his last breath. We have these wrenches, these things that come in and they wreck our plans. They completely destroy the image, the picture that we had for our lives moving forward. But then let's be honest. Sometimes there's a big wrench, once in a lifetime wrench, something like a pandemic, something that wrecks all of our plans and all of our things. Now these wrenches, no matter what the size they are, they come in and they wreck things. They mess up our goals. They mess up our vision for our life. And all of a sudden, our dot-to-dot picture for our life, it just doesn't make sense anymore. This one's over here, and then maybe the next one's over here, and we can't even find number 3. And we find ourselves screaming and yelling, God, where are you? Why is all this happening to me? Or we wonder, God, do you even know what you're doing? God, do you even have a plan at all? And sometimes, and maybe often, if we're really honest, when these wrenches come, we begin to doubt God's existence even at all. And so let's wonder, does God have a plan for our lives? And here's where I think things get tricky, where things get really difficult with this question. And here's the place where I struggle with this question. Even after all of the years of seminary, I still find myself actually wanting to believe that God has a single plan for my life, and that all I have to do is follow God and follow that plan and keep to it. But here's the problem with that kind of thinking. If I assume that God has one plan for my life, then when I think about these wrenches, when I think about the places that my plans were interrupted, it's easy to think that God put those in my way on purpose. And I think we do this all the time. We do this to each other. We say things to other people who have had or experienced tough things like, everything happens for a reason. And in one way, we say this because I think it gives us some kind of sense of superiority, some sense of control or order to the world. If there's one path, then everything on that path must happen for a reason. And let's be real. We say things like this because we're uncomfortable. We're uncomfortable with not having the answers to the difficult things and the difficult circumstances, the tough wrenches that come in our lives. So if I can tell you that everything happens for a reason, then it doesn't send me into some kind of existential crisis. It doesn't cause me to look at a world that is so broken that kids are diagnosed with cancer and loving grandpas die and puppies get hit by cars. So we say things like this. We say things like everything happens for a reason because we want to have the answers and we want to have control. Oh man, if I'm really honest, I like to have answers and control. And I think that we all do. But here's the problem with this. If I assume one almighty, straight and narrow plan for my life, this one plan that I just need to find so I can make the jump from dot to dot, then all things will work out, creating the picture that I have in mind, then I also assume that it's true that God gives me those wrenches. That would mean that God caused my miscarriage, that God caused Ryan's company to close right when I was unemployed. And honestly, if that's the truth, that's kind of a jerk move. That's not the kind of God that I really want to worship at all. So if God doesn't have a magical, singular plan for our lives, what does God give us then? Instead, God gives us something so much better. God gives us God's Son. So God sends Jesus to come and free us from all the things that come and wreck our plans. So God sends Jesus to liberate us from all the places where a wrench is thrown into our lives, or that the world throws a wrench into our lives. So let's be honest, sometimes we throw the wrench into our own lives. God sends God's Son to walk with us when we mess things up or when we veer off in some crazy direction or crazy path. God sends God's Son to show us how to care for each other and to work with God for the co-creation of the world, to work with God for the good of the world. My friends, God doesn't cause evil. God doesn't cause wrenches to be thrown into your life. Instead, God gives creation. God gives us freedom. In Galatians, it says, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery." It's because of the work of Jesus Christ that we have been made free, completely free. Freedom to choose our own path, whichever direction we want to go. But God promises us to be with it no matter which path we choose. Now, I'm the mom of 2 adult people, a man-child, as I call him, and a woman-child, as I call her. And this is what I have learned so far. There's some point at about age 19 or 20 when your adult child knows the most that they are ever going to know in their entire lives. Sometime at about age 19 or 20, they've got it all handled. They've got it all figured out. They have the answers to absolutely everything. But then, right after that, about 20, 21, it all goes downhill from there. They start to realize how much they don't actually know and how helpful it might be to use you as a parent, as a resource, as someone who's already survived their 20s to help give them wisdom and resources so that they don't go and screw up their own lives. And I'll be honest, sometimes my man-child and my woman-child, they go and do things I would rather that they didn't do, things that I don't cause or do in their lives, and I watch them go do these things, and then I watch them get their consequences, and then I pick them back up over and over and over again. And why? Because they're my kids, and I love them. And I think this is how it works with God too. God has set us free, but God is willing to guide us, to walk with us, to coach us and love us through all of the things in life, not with a laid out plan, a little straight and narrow that we have to go do, but as a shepherd and as a guide, keeping us there through all the good times and through all the bad, through all the wrenches that just get thrown our way. And because of that, we get to co-create with God. We get to co-create this world. We get to co-create our lives alongside with God. We get to take those terrible things, those wrenches, and we get to turn them into good things if we want to. I mean, think about it. How many times have you seen someone go and do just that? Take that horrible thing that happened into their life and use it for good. Someone who's been sober for 30 years, who sponsors a woman who just started to give up drinking. Someone who writes about their experience of parenting a differently abled child so that others can find tips and empathy while raising theirs. Someone who shares their abuse story so that others don't feel so alone in it. Sometimes we see a child whose parents struggled with illness, who grows up to be a doctor to work to find a cure to that illness. Or we see a cancer survivor who takes the time to sit and listen to those newly going through chemo. Or we see a veteran who has overcome their own PTSD, who sits at the VFW talking and listening to others so that their suffering isn't silent. Or we see a mom who loses her infant in childbirth, who starts to walk. She starts to raise money and awareness so that women will know that they are not alone. Or we see a college student who feels a deep sadness of the condition of the environment, so they start a club to go and do something about it. Or we see a widow who knows exactly what to say and how to offer comfort when her friend loses her partner. Or we see a pastor who tells the story of a tough time in her life to teach you something about God's work in the world. We get to take those bad things. We get to take those conditions of a broken world and work to shine Christ's light together for others. We get to co-create with God. God has set us free to create a plan together, to co-create our lives and the life of the world with God. How cool is that? In the book of Romans, it says, and we know that in all things, all the good things that you have in your life, all the bad, all the wrenches, all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. You see, God is working with us all the time, taking those wrenches, taking those times when you got what you didn't expect and doing the opposite. God's taking the time and shifting them and healing them and working them and molding them into something new where you can't help back and look at those things that have happened in your life in the past and see God's greasy fingerprints on all of those wrenches. To see God's greasy fingerprints on all of your life where God was creating with you. And here's the good news. Ryan, he found another job after a couple of really difficult weeks. We conceived again and we had our beautiful little girl, Skylar, and I ended up back in some part-time ministry. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't super, super hard. And it doesn't mean that God gave us those struggles. And it doesn't mean that that was part of some cosmic plan, because guess what? God's promise is bigger than any plan. Proverbs 3 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to God, and God will make your paths straight. Or the psalmist says, I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my eye upon you. It's both doing and surrendering. God co-creates your life. God co-creates this world with you and with me. God is working with all of us together because God's promise is bigger than any plan that you or I could ever possibly imagine. God promises that you'll never be so far that God won't find you. God promises that you'll never be so broken that God won't fix you. God promises that there will never be a wrench so big that God won't work with you through it. God promises that you'll never be so messed up that God won't be there in the mess with you. And God's willing to coach you, to guide you, and to love you through your life, and then usher you beautifully and safely into the next, because that is how much God loves you. Amen.
Step out of the shadows, step out of the grave, break into the wild, and don't be afraid. Run into wide open spaces, grace is waiting for you. Dance like the weight has been lifted, grace is waiting. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom, there is freedom. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom, there is freedom. Come out of the dark, just as you are, into the fullness of His love. For the Spirit is here, let there be freedom. Let there be freedom. Bring all of your burdens, bring all of your scars. Come back to communion, come back to the start. Run into wide open spaces, grace is waiting for you. Dance like the weight has been lifted, grace is waiting. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom, there is freedom. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom, there is freedom. Come out of the dark, just as you are, into the fullness of His love. For the Spirit is here, let there be freedom. Let there be freedom. Prison shake at the sound of Jesus' name. Lives made whole, hearts awake at the sound of Jesus' name. Here we go. Chains will fall, prison shake at the sound of Jesus' name. Lives made whole, hearts awake at the sound of Jesus' name. Yeah. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom, there is freedom. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom, there is freedom. Come out of the dark, just as you are, into the fullness of His love. For the Spirit is here, let there be freedom. Let there be freedom.
Yes, let there be freedom. Thank you so much for joining us for worship today. Please pray with us the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us for worship today. If you're someone who's new to Calvary, we would love for you to join our email list. You can do this on our website at www.calvaryalex.org and click on the button that says, I want to sign up for emails. We've found that it's the easiest way for us to get the message out over all the things that God is inviting us to co-create in this community and in the world. We'd love for you to be part of that. And speaking of co-creating with God, if you are somebody who lives in the Alexandria area, we have a backpack attack event this Wednesday night. Backpack Attack is a partnership between United Way of Douglas and Pope County and Calvary and the Alexandria School District. Through Backpack Attack, we will pack 1,500 meals for Alexandria area students who need supplemental weekend food. So we are honored to be able to make this happen in our community, and we would love to have you come join us. And if you're watching us from anywhere in all of the world, you can join us every week for a little inspiration every day at 6:15 on something that we call the Daily Dose. Daily Dose is 7 minutes of inspiration from one of Calvary's staff members, and you can find Daily Dose on our Facebook, our YouTube, or on Calvary's website. And now as we close our time together, we're going to close with a time of offering. We're grateful for your generosity. Your generosity enables us to co-create goodness and light in the world with God. And please know that Calvary is making a significant impact in our community during these challenging times. There are 4 ways that you can give, and they are on your screen. The first is that you can go to that same website, calvaryalex.org, and click on the button that says Give. The second is that you can Venmo us with the Venmo handle there on the screen. The third is that you can write a check and stick it in the mail to 605 Douglas Street, Alexandria, Minnesota, 56308. And the fourth is that you can call the number that is on your screen. Hey guys, thanks so much for worshiping with us. Have a great day.